in the environment and knowing your environment and some of this. Sometimes it's challenging. So this is a video just to put you into, I'll give you a little bit of background here. It was provided to me by a colleague that worked for the ISTA back 2 years back. But that was, if I remember, Intel that were shipping some very expensive components to China, and they were noticing a very high level of damage. So they actually did a little bit of the sci-fi approach. Okay, they went there, took a look at what was going on, and this is air transportation. Okay, as you may notice, this is an aircraft pallet. Okay, with a bunch of boxes loaded, and you see what was happening here. So that's 5 boxes before, whoops, someone tries to catch them, okay? So this is really challenging because even if you were to do, I should have this as a loop, even if you try to, we get this Intel box. If you want to plan for something like this, it's really hard because first person is stepping on the box, then you're dealing with a drop of about, 8 feet, okay, which is really large, and it's really challenging. So again, it's not happening all the time, but these are things that sometimes it's really hard to plan for, and we're going to talk a little bit later. I'm going to go through your homework and discuss that with you afterwards. But there's advantages to both sci-fi approach and using the data loggers. But sometimes the sci-fi approach is, it's the only way to really understand what is going on. So that's one of the challenges if you go in packaging, you may be faced with. Okay, so what I will do today, I'm changing a little bit compared to previous years. What I'm going to do. So at the end of this, where we were at, we were going to pharmaceutical shipment. Okay, and I have a little bit of a few slides on this, but I want to start with another series of slides before we go through this. And let's see. Last time, just a quick review. It's always good to do a quick review of what we've done last time. So, what we were talking about is looking at some specific or particular products and how some of their unique characteristics may influence the way they are handled or the way they are packaged. And one option or one cases we discuss a little bit, quite a lot I should say, are the shipment of horticultural products. And one aspect of one of their characteristics is that they need to be cooled down as soon as possible after harvest. That operation is called pre-cooling, and depending how it's done, packaging systems used for these products need to have a few features, okay? So they sometimes may have to have a certain amount of vents to allow good air movements. These vents need to be matching the different level of packaging, meaning primary packaging, secondary, and tertiary if it is the case. So that's important. So we went through the different modes, different types of pre-cooling that can be done. Root cooling. We talked about forced air cooling, where actually air is forced through. Okay. We also talked about squirrels a little bit. Hydro cooling. Obviously, we mentioned that boxes, crates, okay, or plastic container using these has to be good drainage that will allow water to circulate and trickle down vertically in the load. We talked about icing, different types of icing, and we also mentioned that if you do deal with slurry icing, it adds quite a bit of weight, so it adds costs. It has basically increased the requirement for the strength of the box, and also increase cost of shipment and stuff like this because you almost double your weight of the load using these methods. Talk quickly about this vacuum cooling, and then we were up to pharmaceutical products. This is where we stop. So I'm going to go very quickly. I'm not going to cover all these slides because I'd rather jump into a series of slides that sometimes I usually kept for the end of the semester, and sometimes we don't always cover it. But I wanted to jump to this because it's a bit more complete. But there's a few things here that I want to first introduce. So obviously, shipment of pharmaceutical products also beg for their very specific characteristic for their packaging system. So one of the reasons, obviously, is that it's not because they're alive or something like this. Some of these may be alive in a way, but they have extremely high value. That's one thing, okay? And the other thing, as we have seen so far, it's really hard, okay, to really rely 100% to any mode of transportation for temperature control. There's going to be a lot of variation, so you need to use either a refrigerated container or design something that will be able to maintain temperature, okay? Because a lot of these products, as you may know, are really temperature sensitive. And the other thing that is really critical for us is that there's important health risk for the end users, okay? And that's particularly true if you're talking about blood products, vaccines, and things like this. So this is important. So these are highly regulated by the FDA, okay? And typically, short temperature excursion outside the specific range. We'll see there's different ranges, but the classic range is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So the thing is, at the beginning, when they start to worry about these a lot, anytime your load was going outside that range, it was done. Okay, so they will scrap the whole thing. So the thing now is that they realize that depending on where you measure the temperature, you get different values, okay? And also that even if the temperature went outside that range for a little while, it doesn't mean that everything is bad. So they start to do studies about the effect of those excursion, and that's a term that is important. When your temperature goes outside the range, that's what is referred to as, in the industry, as excursions. So where it goes when your product is exposed to an excursion is it depends on time and temperature. Okay, so it's a combination of both. Because if it's exposed to 40 degrees Celsius for 2 minutes, okay, it might not be a big deal. But if it's exposed to 20 degrees Celsius for an hour, that may be a big deal. So it's a balance or a combination of time and temperature. So they start to do a lot of research, okay, to know their product, okay, and be able to say, if we have this kind of excursion, can we keep the product, okay? Is it still safe? Is it still conserve its efficacy for the end user? So more and more is done on this. So this is kind of scary, but the World Health Organization mentioned that about as much as 50% of all vaccine products, okay, may reach their destination in an unstable state. Obviously, it's all around the world, but it's some issues right there. So, pharmaceutical product, what do they need? Therefore, they often need a certified or qualified packaging system. Okay, you often need to use, or some company wants to use temperature sensors or indicators. So the difference is the following: a temperature sensors or data logger will monitor and record the temperature. Okay, temperature indicators, okay, might be more of a passive system that's not going to record anything, but may display if the temperature basically went out of range for a certain period of time or reached a certain level. So what is used, for example, as indicators, there's different types. For example, if your product cannot be frozen, you may have these little tags where a liquid or ink, for example, if it's basically frozen, you're going to have some part that's going to break, that's going to leak, okay, and basically color the tag a different color and alarm the person that, okay, that thing has been exposed to freezing temperature. You also may have like inks or other components that will be sensitive to time and temperature, and you can have barcodes that will change with time and temperature exposure. So these are more indicators. So when you think about this as well, you have to think about the life of the system. Okay, so is it going to be a one-use system? Is it going to be something that's going to be multiple shipments? Okay, these are important things because they will justify how much money is invested in your design. Okay, requires technical expertise, and you also need to qualify your system typically into two different range of temperature. So generally, you will talk about shipment in the summer, okay, where you use a hot temperature profile to test your system, or in the winter time, a cold temperature profile to see if your system be able to perform. And oftentimes, you're going to need two packaging design depending of the seasons, okay, unless you want to pay a lot of money and have one system, okay, that will be able to do everything. So here I'm going to skip this part, okay. I may end with the cold chain rule, okay. This is pretty straightforward. It applies to any types of temperature-sensitive product, okay. Instead of cold chain rule, this could be, every temperature-sensitive product is usually referred as cool chain or cold chain. But then the real term could be actually optimum temperature chain. Okay, that's really what it is. Okay, and the rule is really to apply the right temperature or optimum temperature as soon as possible, to apply it to a sound product. Okay, and apply it throughout the distribution chain. So if these rules were followed, okay, all the time, there will not be any issues. Okay, but obviously, as you've seen, this is challenging. But these are the rules of the cold chain. Yes.
What's a sound product?
It's a product that has not been deteriorated previously. Okay? It's still sound. Okay, so now we're going to jump into one of the series of slides that I passed to you today, pharmaceutical, temperature-sensitive shipment of pharmaceutical and blood products. So those of you who just arrived, make sure we get those slides. Okay.
The temperature ones are
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at it. I'm not going to cover them. You know what? I'll print some more, okay, for next time. I appreciate it.
Are there extra slides?
There should be extra slides. Are they there?
Are you talking about the packaging there?
You can have them go there. Yeah. Did you get one of these? Of these? No? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, already? Okay. Oh, sorry. So there was two handouts today. You got two? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay, so something we just talked about, obviously, healthcare product needs to be maintained within a certain range. Okay, we talked about this. This includes all movement between production side, where you have raw material, finished product, labeling side, packaging side, distribution center, and so on. So, as you will see, is that these products are so expensive that they need, if you want to do a good job, they should be packaged when the temperature controls it. It has to be packaged between 2 and 8. It should be done at 2 and 8, okay? So that means you need people with winter gear and doing this, okay? Otherwise, you're putting a lot of risk that the package is not going to make it to start Generally speaking, large volume shipments, okay, if you're talking about pallet or more than a pallet, will use active system, okay, such as temperature control, aircraft container, sea container, refrigerated trailer or trucks, okay, to be shipped, okay. So, in a way, if you use this, usually it will work well unless you have a catastrophic failure of the truck or trailer or container. And if it does happen, okay, then you have a big loss on your hand, okay, so that's the thing. But if you have large volume, that's what it's going to be. Now, more and more, okay, as we see with online pharmacies and so on, you have a lot of small packages that are shipped directly to us, okay, also shipped to pharmacies and hospitals, doctor's office, and so on. So these small volume shipments, okay, utilize passive thermal shipping or packaging system. That means that you have a box, okay, with multiple components that are designed to maintain the temperature during the distribution chain. Without anything else, whatever you throw at it, okay, it should be able to maintain the temperature for distribution. Common range of these temperature for sensitive product, 2 to 8 is really the big one, okay, so in Fahrenheit you have 35.6 to 46.4, and the other one is closer to room temperature, okay, 59 to 77. So blood products, okay, which can include plasma, platelets, and stuff like this, okay, have various temperature requirements, such as 2 to 6, 2 to 8, 1 to 10, 20 to 24, frozen, deep frozen, all of these, okay, will have various temperatures. So, again, it has to be maintained throughout the distribution range. And the tighter the range, obviously, the most difficult it gets. So that's the thing. So, most of the shipments, we just mentioned as well, that they're sent to hospital, pharmacy, individual. And that's where it brings us to the concept of the last mile. Okay? So this, I'll ask you to take some notes. It's not explained there because I want you to understand. It's very simple to remember, but the last mile, what it is actually, probably the most challenging part of their journey to the distribution chain, is when the package has been delivered, okay, again, to you, to the doctor's office, to the pharmacy, and where it sits there, okay, awaiting to be taken care of. So, just think about this. If you receive the box of pharmaceutical or whatever it is that you receive at your place, and let's say it's delivered in the afternoon in Florida, okay, in the summertime, and the box sits outside. If it's in the sun, even if it's not in the sun, it's exposed to pretty high temperature, right? Okay, it can be really cold as well. Or if it's in the mailbox, those black mailbox gets hot, okay? So that's why it's always full of these little lizards and stuff. It always freaks me out. So, yeah, lizards, I'm still not used to these. So that's what's called the last mile. And on top of being challenged because of the nature of the temperature that can be extreme, it's even more challenging because this is the end of the journey. So that means that any type of resources that were packaged to maintain the temperature can be like, as you will see later on, gel packs or phase change material. They are also to the end of their design life, okay? So that is an additional challenge. So the last mile, when we refer to the last mile, is the last portion of the trip when the package has been delivered and it sits in uncontrolled condition, okay? That can be outside or in the doctor's office and so on. So, again, most of these shipments are shipped through parcel service company, UPS, FedEx, DHL, or whatever, in a non-controlled temperature environment. So it's shipped with your Amazon boxes and whatever else you're shipping, okay, or receiving. So these shipments are typically about 2-day shipments, okay? But the time it takes from departure to arrival can vary between 24 hours to more than 100 hours. That varies depending on location, if it's remote, if it's near a big center, and so on. Obviously, the travel time. It also varies a lot if this is shipped over a weekend. That's why they need to be avoided at all costs. So if you ship something pharmaceutical, they will try to ship it usually early in the week, so we'll make sure it comes before the weekend. Because if a shipment has to stay over a weekend, then it's likely that it's going to be very challenging to maintain the temperature all the way to the delivery. And the reason for this is that, if you pass 24 hours, 48, or when it past 48 hours, it becomes pretty challenging to maintain the temperature in different environments. So, what are the factors to consider when we design one of these guys? Okay, and I have a bunch of examples to show you. I guess I can. I'll go through this and then I'll show you. We have a schematic and also I have one here I can show you. So obviously, we have to look at the shipment durations. Okay, so do you want your box to last for 24, 48, 72, 100 hours? It depends. Okay. So that's one. Obviously, the destination plays a role in there, obviously. Weight and volume. So volume of your product and weight as well of the whole thing, okay? Because weight is going to dictate how much it's going to cost, and volume as well, but they both play a role, okay? And it's going to be important. It depends as well if you ship a box a week or if you ship 500 bucks a week, okay? Or more. So that's a big difference as well. Cost of material and shipping, obviously it's linked. Single or multiple use, very important. Okay, so if you have a box that's going to be, let's say you ship to yourself, meaning that you ship from CVS distribution center to a CVS pharmacy, then in a way you allow, okay, it'll be easier to design and use a reusable box that can be returned, okay? But if you ship to a consumer, then usually it's going to be scrap, okay? So it's going to be a single use. Component storage and preconditioning. So obviously when you use a box like this, you have a bunch of components. Insulation, you're going to have the box themselves, you're going to have gel packs, okay? You may have other types of dunnage material that you will need. So you need room to store it, okay? So you need to be taken into consideration the size of these things, okay, what kind of storage they require, and also what kind of temperature. So precondition, what does that mean? Okay, you should also know what it means. It's important. Is where you condition, okay, all the components of your box before shipment. That means you have to store them at the right temperature for an extended period of time, usually 24, 48 hours. So you're sure that whatever refrigerant you're using is going to be at the right temperature, because sometimes it takes time to reach those temperatures. All the components of your box should be at the right temperature. That means if you ship something that is between 2 to 8, typically all the components will have to be preconditioned, okay, at 5 degrees Celsius. Obviously, if you're using ice, it's going to be minus something, okay? But between 2 to 8, insulation panels, the box, they should be at 5 degrees Celsius when you package it. So preconditioning is really the action of exposing all the components to the right temperature in advance. So that means that if you have a lot of boxes, you need to have large cold rooms to store and precondition these things. Assembly, okay? So time and complexity needs to be taken into account, because obviously the time it takes for someone to put the different components is going to be playing a role. So if you look at, we can come back on there, but if you have a box with all these components, so let's say you have the outer box that can be corrugated, or it can be also plastic. You have an insulation, you have an inner box, then you have a bunch of, let's say, phase change material, you have an ice pack on top, and you have your pharmaceutical product in there. So this is something that you can see typically, okay? So there's a lot of components. And the thing is, the people, and it's nothing negative here, but the people who are usually employed to package these things, okay, they don't have necessarily, they have not been educated, okay, in the way to really understand all the importance of these different components and maybe the order. It's not that they want to do bad or they just don't care, it's just that they don't know, okay? So a good example, we had our research group were doing things like on this aspect a few years back, and we were inspecting operation, okay? And the guidelines to pack something, you had to put 6 gel pack, and it had to be distributed around the load, okay? But one of the guys said that he didn't want to forget to put 6 gel packs. So what he was doing first is takes the 6 gel pack and put them in the corner of the box, okay? And then put everything around, okay? Everything was failing every time, okay? So, and partially if you have a lot of components, error can be made. So keep it as simple as possible, and obviously less component will also help, okay, to do these things. And it's for time, complexity, to avoid packaging mistakes, okay? So, and again, good documentation, good protocol to do these things are important. Obviously, if you're shipping, season plays a role here, destination, mode of transportation, and obviously the number of shipments. I told you again, if you ship a few bucks a week, it's going to be totally different than if you ship like hundreds of them, where you can purchase things in bulk, okay, to get better prices, okay. So these play a big role. So, what are the different components? We touched on this a little bit, but in general, you need a few things, okay. You need a box or a shell on the outside, okay. You need thermal insulation, and you need cold sources, or what's called also thermal buffer. So, thermal insulation, the 3 main types we're going to see is polystyrene, okay, expanded polystyrene, styrofoam as we refer to, polyurethane, and vacuum insulated panels. These are the main ones. More and more you see the new types of material that come into play, and their goal is to replace polystyrene, okay? Because polystyrene is not the most environmentally friendly material, okay? It's actually not that good of an insulation as well, and but the thing is it's cheap. That's why it's used, okay? Because it's easy to mold, it's cheap to mold, and it's just cheap, okay? So it's really hard sometimes to justify using something else when you have this available. So what people are using as an alternative more and more these days is they're looking at natural fibers, okay, that you can package into plastic and to use them, like in a little plastic bag. So what I've seen is actually some people use like shredded jeans, okay, that basically you shred them, okay, into pieces, okay, and you create that, those fibers, okay. It's a bit like you can stuff a pillow with this. So they're working on using stuff like this that can be used. Any of you use food, services distribution, for example, HelloFresh and things like this? No? Your parents? No? Okay. Some point maybe. You know what I'm talking about? Like either the meal is ready or all the ingredients are prepared, they ship it to you with a piece of fish or chicken. But you'll see, I'll try to bring some. We have some in the lab where they use that fibrous material as an insulation. But the thing is, pharmaceutical companies usually don't want to use this a lot, okay? Because you don't always know the provenance and if it's been sterilized and things like this. Yes?
How would you use polyurethane as a thermal insulation? Like, how would it look like?
The thing you ask. At some point I was tired to bring this in and out, so I just left it here and it's staying here. So, let me put that here. So that is just a box, obviously. You see here 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So this is actually a polyurethane box. So you have 2 pieces. Okay, you have a lid, and you have the core here. Like this. So this has been molded. It's been bagged up a little bit here. There's a few things here. A few silver fishes. So that would be a polyurethane box, okay? So, and this one was actually a very interesting design. How it was designed to work, okay, is in the middle here, you will place your corrugated box with your product, okay, in here, and it's basically was raised, okay? At the bottom, you had like those little bumps here that will raise the box, and on both sides here, you had those those location where it was designed to be put a gel pack in there that was frozen, but at minus 20, I think, Celsius. Okay, so minus 20 Celsius, about minus 6, 7 Fahrenheit. Okay, so and their idea for this design was to blanket the load with natural convection, so you will have cold air circulation in there. That was their design. So that's one of this.
Did it work
Okay?
well?
I'm sorry?
Did it work well?
It was okay. I don't know if they're still in business though. I don't think so. This was called Ambro Cooler. I should look. Check. Did some tests with them in the past.
Maybe he's got sold to Jordan Life Sciences. I don't like that name. I don't know. It's so popular that their server is down, I think. We'll see. But it seems it still exists, but that was one of the options.
So that's polyurethane. So vacuum insulated panel, they look something like this, like space age technology. So I don't want to touch it because it's kind of gross. There's like always like weird powder in these things. But what you have is you will have a solid porous material in there. Okay, it can be some kind of foam. Okay, and some people actually use aerogel. You guys know aerogel? You heard about this? So it's like silica, if I remember, but it's one of the most best insulation known to man. Okay, and it's super porous. Okay, so they will put the pieces in there and they'll pull a vacuum and seal it. Okay, so because the material is really porous. Okay, that means it's pretty poor conductor because they have very small channel for the heat to be conducted. And therefore, there's also no convection because there's no air, so you rely on radiation. So these panels are really, really, really good insulation. But their weakness is that if they get punctured, they're done. Okay? So that's why they're usually protected in something like this. Okay? Additional part. But when they're good, they're the best you can use. Okay? But they're very expensive. So vacuum insulated panels, VIPs. Okay? Let me check. I'm curious if that thing came back to life. No, that's different. Live foam. I would like to look at this. That looks a bit different. So that's what it is. So cold source, you can have ice, just regular ice. What do you think is the issue with ice?
It melts.
It melts, yes. What else?
Water.
You have water.
Mold.
So what's the range of temperature here?
2
to 8. What temperature does ice freezes at? 0. So it's just outside that range, okay? So you have to play with it, okay? But that's one of the issue, okay? But obviously, having like water and loose ice in there, it's not good, okay? Because it leaks and so on. So you have water-based gel pack, which is basically whatever you use, okay, if you go in the lunchbox or camping or whatever it is, okay, typical gel pack, or you have phase change material. So phase change material is a fancy name, okay, for a gel pack that change phase, okay, at a different temperature. So instead of changing phase at 32, okay, we'll change phase at 40, 50. You can have pretty much everything you want, okay. It's just a gel pack that will melt or solidify at a different temperature. So boxes, they look obviously like this. This was actually that box, the Andro Cooler. You see those two gel pack, and they had a box that they supply that would fit in there, and you put your payload in there. So a lot of these will have still just styrofoam. So some have really thick polyurethane. Some have 2 parts. Some have multiple parts, okay? So, meaning two parts, you will have a solid molded bodies like this, and then you will have a lid. Others will have 6 panels that you put in there. Which one do you think is better? 2 parts, why?
And then like there is spaces between the meat, so you can really keep it.
Okay, that's really good. So the panels, obviously, you have to handle those panels and put them in, but also all these gaps, they will never fit perfectly. And these gaps in the corners, they will be basically channel for heat transfer. Okay, a lot more efficient than if you have insulation. So that is basically the cheapest option you can get is styrofoam panel that you put in a box. So that's what they look like. So EPS, I'm going to go through these different materials and go through some pros and cons. So polystyrene, so obviously the big advantage is low cost. It's really popular if you have a single-use application. You ship it and you forget about it, and then it lasts forever in the environment. It's lightweight and it's also flexible, meaning it can be easily molded or fabricated to any type of shape pretty easily. The thing is, it's fragile, it breaks easily. It's not a very good insulation, and it's not easily recyclable. So cost-wise, if you look at these, so a box like this, but in styrofoam, you will look at something anywhere between $10 and $30 for a molded container, and 5 to 10 if you're using panels. So that's polystyrene. Polyurethane. So if any of you are curious and you want to come afterward, this is like solid stuff. So it's pretty rigid, can be used multiple shipment. It's a better insulation. It's heavy, and it's also not easily recyclable. So the cost for something like this, you go about $20 to $50 if you use that as insulation. So vacuum panels, very high insulative properties. They can be also customized, but they're fragile, and they lose their efficiency if they're punctured. That's a very important thing. And it costs a lot of money, and there's not a lot of people that actually are supplying them, yet. It still did not catch up as being a widespread material. And if you're looking at a shipper based on vacuum insulated panel, this is expensive. So if you're shipping a bunch every week, you better ship something that costs a lot of money. Otherwise, it's not going to be a feasible option. So if you look at the cold source now of thermal buffers, so their ice is not really widely used because, again, you already figured this out by yourself. Free water can be a problem, Water-based gel pack, they are widely used, They have low cost, they're convenient, And the thing is, they have phase change around 32. They're typically also not toxic, non-flammable, and relatively environmentally friendly, They have a high latent heat as well. So, depending on what you're dealing with, you can have the cheapest one, like soft pack, which is just a soft packaging bag, plastic bag. Hard pack, those bricks. What do you think would be the advantage of hard packs versus soft packs?
Less damage.
Less damage. That's good. And think about your personal usage,
Protection?
Protection in what way?
Like if it's hard, it'll absorb the damage. If it's soft, it'll go right there.
Okay. Yeah, possibly, yes.
You could reuse that for more times.
Maybe. Obviously, if they might have, it's harder to get punctured, yes.
You can't really mold a hard pack to what you're doing. You can mold a soft pack.
That's actually very close to what I was getting to, Obviously, if they're frozen, it's not going to work, But a hard pack is going to be like this, But it never happened to you that you come back and whatever, and just put that in the freezer, and then you try to take it out, and then it's like ball. It's like a weird shape. That's the thing with soft pack. If you use them frozen and there's not stored flat, then it's maybe hard to put them in your assembly. So a hard pack, you can put them in a box. It doesn't have to be really organized, even if it should be organized. But they're always going to retain the same shape. Soft pack, if they're not If not cared for, they can get punctured, okay, and they also can have not a very desirable shape once they're frozen, okay. Very good. And thermal buffer, the thing is what it is and what is that used for is that people, you don't have to flip back, I'm just going back here, is that the thing is to create a relatively cheap design, the combination that is often used is, if they don't want to have phase change material, is going to use those gel packs that are not frozen, okay? And you're going to put some that are frozen around it, okay? So the reason for this is that those unfrozen gel packs act as thermal buffers. That means that, let's say you precondition them at 5 degrees Celsius and you put something frozen around them at -20. Oftentimes those packaging designs, they fail because the temperature goes too low at the beginning when it's packed before it leaves, okay, it may freeze. So those thermal buffer are there because before the package will freeze, the cold actually has to, it's really, I should say, the heat from the thermal buffer has to diffuse through the cold source, and then that buffer has to freeze before your load freezes. Does it make sense? So that's what it means as a thermal buffer. It's a buffer between your payload and whatever like cold source you may use to be able to survive the whole journey. Does it make sense? So that's what thermal buffers refer to in that sense. Phase change material, I told you, so these are like, they look pretty much like the gel pack, but they're changing phase. They're becoming solid, okay, or liquid at different temperature, okay? So the thing is, the price you pay, okay, to change that phase changes, you lose some of the latent heat. Compared to water, for example, they will basically liquefy with a lot less energy than water, okay? So their latent heat is lower. So the phase change, you may have some issues with accuracy, and stability can also be an issue. That means that if you use them over and over again, sometimes you may have chemical change, okay, that will change the temperature at which they are changing phase. So that will be sometimes an issue. So obviously, if you have PCM and you require certain temperature, you may have to have room that are weird temperature to be stored in, so you will require more equipment. So that might be other things, and the costs are there, so they're a little bit more expensive. What kind of PCM there was? Okay, there's many on the market, and you see some of them are not very appealing. That's why people didn't want to use them first. So you can have phase change material based on salt hydrates. Okay. They can be unstable, limited temperature range, and they are corrosive and toxic, so that doesn't start well. The other type is paraffins, okay? They are made of petroleum product, not always good. Some people don't like this. They are stable, but they're also toxic, okay? And the other thing is that if you go to airport security and stuff like this, it looks like a bomb, okay? So it's not good. The next one that is growing and growing is product that actually bio-derived. That's pretty cool. So this is fat and vegetable oil base. Okay, they actually, you can eat them. Okay, so non-toxic, food-grade product, biodegradable. Okay, cheaper since it's usually like made of low-price vegetable-based feedstock, and you can have a wide range of temperatures. That's where it's going now. Okay. People are using this because it's all pros. So they can be microencapsulated, okay, in fabrics and things like this for different other application. Also low flammability, so it's all good. This table is there as a reference for you. I'm not going to ask you any question on this. It's just to compare the things, okay? So you have temperature option, and you see the latent heat. So water, or ice if you want, 330 joules per gram. So you see you have a little bit less when you use these other types of option if you want for phase change material. But yeah, so it's pretty cool table to compare the different options. But obviously, Pure Temp is one company, but those gel packs are gaining popularity. Let's see how much I have left. Okay. So I think I'm going to stop here for today. The good news or bad news, I don't know how much you're going to like this, but we are really arriving to the end of me lecturing with slides for a little while. So I have a few more slides, then I'm going to go back on the board. So next Monday, probably, make sure you bring something to be able to